leading off for the independent group. Senator Michael
Well, look, Cahill, I first want to welcome this motion and to say that I agree with everything that Senator Blaney and Senator McGreehan have said to date. The second thing I want to say is this, that mention was made of the decade of centenaries which we are engaged in now. In 1923, the Free State government passed a bill of indemnity saying that its own forces were completely exonerated from civil or criminal actions in respect of anything that had happened during our Civil War. A year later, a Farmers' Party deputy put it up to the members of the government that they should extend that principle to the people who had taken the Republican side in the Civil War. And it was rebutted. It was rejected. But curiously, at 10 to 4, on the 7th of November 1924, someone sitting where you're sitting now, Cathaoirleach, said that the President of the Executive Council, W.T. Cosgrave, had an announcement to make. And he stood up and he recited that the Executive Council, the Cabinet of the day, had passed a resolution that there were to be no more prosecutions or criminal prosecutions taken against anybody on either side in the Civil War. And a line was drawn in the criminal justice process across the prosecution of either side by that means. And I only mention that to say this, that there are times when we should consider that maybe the people in this chamber then understood what was needed to achieve reconciliation. And even though it must have been very painful for people in that house, some of whom had had their houses burned and some of whom had had their uncles and aunts and children killed by actions from the other side in the Civil War, even though it was painful for them perhaps to adopt that measure, Richard Mulcahy, who had then resigned over the army mutiny and was just a backbencher, praised Cosgrave and said that this was a very generous decision. Now, I want to say now, in Northern Ireland, and I want to say this particularly in relation to the amendment which Senator Blaney has said that he's willing to accept, that the legacy prosecutions can only go so far. And people who advocate for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission should be mindful of this, that there will never be full revelation of what happened in the past, no matter what is done, and the South African model will not be applicable in Northern Ireland. The British security services will never reveal the truths that we fear lurk there, and there are many people on the Republican side who will never say exactly what happened in respect of a lot of things. So going back over former killings, some people say it's necessary. It's necessary to vindicate the feelings of survivors and their families, and victims' families. But I query it. I query whether we are actually doing anything really significant by putting 70-year-old men on trial for things that happened 50 years ago or 40 years ago. I just query whether there is any sense in this. So the second thing I want to say is this. I, like the previous two speakers, classify myself an Irish Republican. And I believe strongly in the flag, as Senator McGreehan has said, the vision of Thomas Davis, the inclusive ideal of republicanism. And I think that I agree with them that, unfortunately, in Northern Ireland, possibly due to the St. Andrews Agreement, the two largest parties there are in a kind of competitive struggle to achieve ownership of the First Minister's position. And in that political game, it makes sense to polarize rather than to reconcile, to maximise your strength within your own community rather than to look to the middle. And we're going to have to, I think, as a society, we're going to have to look to what reconciliation actually means. And I, for that reason, hugely welcome the terms of the motion as proposed. The fact is that every poll suggests that if a referendum on Irish unity was held tomorrow, it would be decisively rejected by 60 or more percent to 40%. Now, I have no objection to people demanding that those who favour Irish unity should articulate a version of it to be put before the people. That's fine. But constantly agitating for an early referendum in circumstances where there isn't an immediate prospect of it being accepted, and therefore the Good Friday Agreement's prerequisite for it being held are not present, doesn't achieve anything in terms of reconciliation. And I'll finish by saying this. Senator Blaney mentioned Sean Lemass and his efforts for peace and reconciliation on this island, his efforts to break moulds. And I look back to a photograph which I found among family photographs recently of Sean Lemass, Neil McNeill and Brian McNeill, two of my uncles, on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the killing of Brian McNeill by Free State forces on the top of Benbulben in a summary execution. And there was reconciliation. And I believe that in Northern Ireland we need the same spirit of reconciliation. And we need to stop the funerals, the marches, the commemoration speeches and all the rest of it and look together to a shared future. Thank you.
Caramagat, Anish.